Hello, everybody. A couple of weeks ago, we had Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather or the so-called godfather of AI on the show, talking about the supposed threats of AI to humanity, to civilization. Geoffrey, who is anything except honest, very straightforward guy, said he absolutely has no idea. But what he did note about AI was that it was a thing of values and that we needed to install our own values, our best values into this new thing, AI. We have another godfather on the show today, the godfather of security, Bruce Schneier, a very respected thinker on computers, technology, and security. Bruce is the author of many books. He's been on the show before talking about his previous book, A Hacker's Mind. Bruce has a new book out. It's co-authored with Nathan Sanders. It's called Rewiring Democracy. So it's on AI too. It's an optimistic book. And Bruce is joining us from Toronto, where he's teaching this semester. He's actually teaching next, I think, maybe literally or metaphorically next to Geoffrey Hinton. So Bruce, congratulations on the new book, Rewiring Democracy. Like Geoffrey, you seem to think that AI reflects us. Is that a fair way of putting it?
So there's a lot in AI. When you think about the generative AI, the AI that's ingesting all of our writings and then producing realistic responses, it is reflecting us. It's literally reflecting us. That's the way it works. And depending on what we give it, that determines how it responds. And I think it's really important to realize that the data we're giving it is shaping how it behaves, how it acts, how it responds.
Bruce, you're very realistic about technology or anything but a Silicon Valley utopian. How would you explain, though, the paranoia about AI that seems to have gripped everybody these days? Anyone who's writing books about it, articles, is suggesting that it's about to destroy us as a species. It's undermining our freedom. It's compounding all the problems of big tech. What is it about AI that brings out our paranoia?
I don't know if it's AI, but those are three very separate things. I mean, certainly there is the fears of big tech, which have come out of social media and the monopolization and the power of these companies inside the thing. So that's a fear of not really AI, but of who's controlling AI. And that's a very real fear. There's the other fear that there are a lot of not great uses, and those will be used by powerful people to extend their power to the detriment of everybody else. And those are the fears of AI propaganda, undermining democracy, those sorts of things. And lastly, there are the fears of the technology, which are totally not universal. I mean, there is a very loud contingent of AI doomers that think it'll destroy humanity. Lots of people don't share that view. So those are three very separate things for three separate reasons. They're coming to a head now with this technology because it is now so much in the news and so much promise. Like, this is a backlash to that. But try not to combine these streams because they're very different.
Bruce, as I said at the beginning, you're an expert on security. So you are very realistic about the threat to security. In fact, I had to convince you to use Chrome for this interview. So you're all too aware of some of the threats to our privacy of new technology. Do you use AI? Are you comfortable with these new platforms, whether they're from OpenAI or Anthropic or Gemini?
So again, don't confuse AI or generative AI. I use AI all the time. If I'm using a map program, I'm using AI. If I'm doing a Google search, I'm using AI. I mean, so many things have AI built into them that we don't realize. And those are all incredibly useful. I think what you're asking about are generative AI systems, right? The chat GPTs, the Geminis, the AI is where you give it a prompt and it gives you an answer, either text or an image. I tend not to use those, not because I don't like them or think they're bad, it's because I'm set in my workflows, so they're not really necessary. Sometimes I will turn to those platforms if I think there's value, but I'm very much a writer myself, and the act of writing is something I enjoy. So I don't feel I need an AI writing assistant. It is rare that I need an image, but I have used AI to create images. So I'm not really a user. My students use it all the time, of course. Right? They are younger, and for a lot of people, writing is hard, and going from a blank piece of paper to a draft is powerful. I'll tell my students to take essays they've written and have the AI critique it, and that can be valuable. Uh, Students who don't have English as their first language will have AIs use grammar checkers. Okay, suppose there's something else I use. I use AI. Spell checkers now all use AI. So
Well, you certainly need a spell checker to get your name right.
yeah, but yeah, it's not that good at that.
Schneier. I had to
I
use
know.
it, otherwise I'd have got it wrong.
Yeah, 4 consonants, 3 vowels. It's hard. So I mean, so AI is embedded in many things we use, but to go and seek a generative system, that's what takes effort right now. I'm not a user. A lot of people around me do. I'm always impressed by the power of it when I see it. I mean, I think if you're using any kind of language translation for your podcast, that's going to be AI.
So what you're saying, Bruce, is interesting, and this is something that often has occurred to me, that you're distinguishing between these new, very fashionable and highly financed generative AI systems from OpenAI and Anthropic, and suggesting that you don't use them as much, but you use the general AI on the internet, and you're suggesting that even the Google search engine is essentially AI. So what you're implying is that this latest wave of AI is interesting in its own way, but there was a lot of AI before it. Is that your argument?
Before and also now, there are a lot of advances in these non-generative systems. And so last year, effectively, an AI won a Nobel Prize. And this was for protein folding. This was for doing medical research that really wasn't possible before.
This is the deep mind. This is the deep mind.
AIs that are winning chess and Go and shogi and other complex strategy games of skill. That's advances. So there are advances happening all through AI. What's getting the press now are the generative systems. And if you think about it, the notion of an AI conversing in a natural language is very startling. We as humans ascribe humanity to things that talk. And this is why I think you're seeing all this conversation about, do we have some kind of threshold we've crossed where this AI is human-like? It is very human-like. Language is human-like. It's what we associate with being sentient, with being intelligent. So of course, we're going to notice and talk about and fixate on the language abilities of these new AI systems.
We've had Gary Marcus on the show, one of generative AI's great skeptics. I'm sure you're all too familiar with Gary, quite a character. He argues that the current generative AI is miles away from AGI. What's your take on this whole AGI debate? Is it a distraction? Is it helpful?
I think it largely is a distraction. And, sort of what we mean by AGI, I think, is AI as we see it in the movies. Data from Star Trek or C-3PO from Star Wars, right? I mean, an AI that is fundamentally indistinguishable from a person cognitively. I think it largely is a distraction that, it's a goal because it's something we can imagine. But these specialized systems, is the AI going to be a good or bad therapist? Right? Short answer, right now, it's a bad therapist. But we can imagine it being a good therapist or travel agent or financial advisor. That these are much more achievable, they're more limited, and they're also more useful. The question to ask is how far away we are from any of these systems, being effective. And there are sort of two things to think about. One is, Are these generative systems going to get better? And here, the researchers don't know. I mean, one trajectory is these systems are going to get better and better as they get more data and more compute. So they will become just more capable and more indistinguishable from humans. The other is that, this is generative AI. We've seen its trick. We're kind of done. And we need some sort of other fundamental science to move forward. And we don't know which one of those is true. It could be either. The second thing to worry about is security. Right now, these systems are vulnerable to what we're calling prompt injection. So the ability to manipulate them surreptitiously through their input, through commands, all sorts of ways. And right now, these systems are all untrustworthy in this way, that they cannot distinguish commands from data. Data can be manipulated, and they're all vulnerable to attack. So we would not ever trust an AI with, let's say, answering our email, because it could receive a malicious email and do what that malicious email says, and we would never know. And we don't know how, with current technology, to prevent that. So those are the two limiting things right now. They're both significant.
You brought in the T word, Bruce, trust, which gets us, I think, in many ways to your new book, Rewiring Democracy. Ultimately, would it be fair to say that democracy works when we trust it, and perhaps it trusts us, or whatever the it is one of the problems with particularly American democracy in the 2020s, is that we no longer trust it, and perhaps it no longer trusts us?
I think trust is a real important factor in any public system, and certainly eroding trust in the mechanisms of democracy and then the results of democracy, I think, are rising, pretty much around the globe. Interesting question is how technology plays into that. So, let's imagine, and we do this in our book, a couple of different systems. Let's imagine an AI that is making parole decisions. Now, these exist, and they've been proven in the past to be horribly racist, but we can imagine ones that are better. And in order for that to work in society, we all have to trust it. So there's an example of an AI that, unless it's trusted, is not going to really have a place in a democracy. So contrast that with an AI that is being used as an assistant for a politician or even a judge. And we've had examples of both of those as well. And in those cases, the only person who has to trust it is the individual. Right now, that politician will hire human assistants that match its biases, that match its politics. That judge will hire law clerks that match its biases. So we don't need broad trust in order for those systems to be used, just that the individual trusts it. So trust in sort of any system is very context dependent. We have systems that we all have to trust, like the election system. And we have systems that individuals have to trust, which would be their personal assistants. So trust matters, but in very different ways. And how it plays out in technology is different.
Let me come back on this issue of trust is really important in my conversation with Jeffrey Hinton. He suggested, as I said in the introduction, that AIs, for better or worse, are just another manifestation of ideology, I think. And he suggested that the best way to make AI good, secure our future as a species, was to give it female values, whatever female values means. We didn't get into great detail. I'm sure that Jeffrey will come out with a book on this subject. There is another school of thought on AI which suggests that once we create this AI system that knows everything and is a perfect mirror to us, that it will do away with ideology, that it will be objective. When you think about the way in which AI can rewire democracy, do you think about it in terms of having an explicitly ideological system, one that promotes values, maybe the value of female intuition? Or do you see it as a technology that can ultimately create a perfect mirror that will be truly objective, if that's possible?
I don't know if that's even a thing. When you think of perfect mirror, it's perfect mirror of whom? When you think of values, it's whose values? We don't have just one value system. It isn't a matter of, we just do the math and then we get the correct system of values. There are legitimate debates in human society about, which values are correct, which values are paramount. Most of our politics are about what happens when different valid values come into conflict. Right? I mean, is your right to quiet more important than my right to make noise? And at every scale. So you can't look to these systems to solve fundamental humanity problems, because they are real human problems. And the act of a democracy is figuring this stuff out. There isn't really a right answer. I do think values will be embedded into these systems. And in a sense, that's the same way as saying biases. A value is just a bias that we like. A bias towards kindness or justice or equality. And if we don't like it, we'll call it a bias because it's not something we want. So we're going to have systems that mirror different value systems. And I think that's going to be okay. People will choose the ones that reflect them. If it's going to be in some greater system, there'll be some societal system of choosing which value system. I don't think you transcend values, because I don't think they're transcendable in any way. And I don't know if any of us want the AI to just tell us what to do. I mean, the whole point of a democracy is for us to figure it out. And that act of figuring it out is equally important as getting to the answer. If we're just told the answer, that's not a democracy, even if it's the same answer.
And that, of course, was the foundation, supposedly, in theory at least, of American democracy. As we have this moment where we have the opportunity, at least, to rewire democracy, are we potentially back, Bruce, in 1776, an opportunity to remake democracy, perfect it, do you think, in historical terms? Is this a major moment? Maybe not 2025, but this AI moment?
I don't think so, because that's not a technological moment. The notion, and actually, objectively, it's probably a good idea. We've built modern democracy using the best technology that, as you point out, mid 1700s technology could invent, right? I mean, because travel and communications are hard, we need to pick one of us to go all the way over there and pass laws in our name. The system wasn't really designed for 21st century technology. We see it fraying in all sorts of places. And the notion of starting over and building a system that is truly a democracy in the 21st century, whatever that means, sounds like a great idea. It also sounds like a terrible idea. Right? We can imagine all sorts of powerful people and groups and interests working to shape that so that it's not fair and just, but it reflects whatever they want. I don't know if we're in a world where we can do this in a way that the power doesn't co-opt the system. So as a thought exercise, I think it's a great idea. As something to do in 21st century United States right now, seems like an awful mistake. Now, that makes it difficult. That means we are stuck with our mid 1700s technology. Remember, we have a system for updating it. That's the amendment system. That is actually also broken. So you're seeing different groups poke around the edges. And even right now with Trump, you're seeing a lot of the unwritten rules being overthrown. So where we go next is not obvious. I don't think a new constitutional convention would work out very well right now. So I'm not in favor of it, but certainly in the abstract, it would be an interesting idea to think about.
So in terms of rewiring democracy, the title of your new book, Where would you like to see democracy most rewired? The subtitle of the book is How AI Will Transform Our Politics, Government, and Citizenship, three of the core pillars of contemporary democracy. Is it in politics, government, or citizenship that you think AI has the most potential to rewire democracy?
I think we're going to see changes everywhere. So it's actually five sections we talk about. In politics, we talk about AIs being used to assist candidates to run for office. And a lot is talk about misinformation and AI generated images, but there's a lot of work being done in actually doing assistance. And I think less at the national level and more at the local level, where politicians just don't have staff or support or budget. And AI assistance will allow more people to run for office. Seems like an unmitigated good. We talk about AI being used in polling, being used in all sorts of areas of electioneering. So I think there'll be changes there.
Although, just to jump in here, I mean, one could argue that it will enable politicians with the resources, the money, the knowledge to recruit huge teams of AI experts. So in a sense, it might reward the wealthy or the well-connected or the most sophisticated technologically.
And you'll see this dichotomy everywhere. The question is, will the benefits of the technology be broadly accrued across society, or will it accrue to the already powerful? So will it help make us more equal, or will the rich just get richer? And in every one of these use cases, we don't know. I want I would pendulum to swing towards more equality, and there are ways to make that happen. But you're right. If in fact these technologies are limited by money, by power, in other ways, it'll just make the already powerful even more powerful. But here, the tools that we're seeing do have the potential of making it easier to run for office. So let's move to lawmaking. We're seeing a bunch of assistive tools to help lawmakers create laws. So do the act of writing laws and helping them get passed. Not just the US, France has an AI model. Chile has AIs that are doing these sorts of things. And here, the difference, at least in the United States, is right now a lot of assistance comes from lobbyists. Paid people with an agenda will assist lawmakers in drafting legislation because they don't have the staffs to do that. So here again, an AI feels like a better option because it's not captured in the same way. That's one example. You move to government administration, there are thousands of use cases. The Biden administration, before he left office, there was a report where there are a couple of thousand of different areas where AIs are being used. And there are things like helping the patent office figure out prior art, to automatically looking at government documents and understanding them. I saw one piece of research where AI was helping figure out which environmental plants for humans to audit. The option was we do it randomly, or the AI tells us which plants are likely to fail inspection. So they're a positive use case.
I'm guessing you're probably not a big fan of Elon Musk, although he promised to do this with his short-lived, rather disastrous Doge. Are you in the Jen Palka camp in terms of the potential of AI to reform government?
I am in the Palka camp, and the difference between her and Elon Musk is she looks at the specifics. It's not about a big AI doing random things. It's about using often non-generative AI in specific areas to help humans solve specific problems. And here again, there's a difference between, does the AI replace the human or augment the human? Generally, right now, systems where the AI helps people are better systems. So I want to move now to the judiciary. And here we're seeing AI in a lot of different areas. Judges are using it to help understand precedent. Attorneys are using it. And I think there's going to be a lot of changes here. Here we're seeing generative AI cause all sorts of problems, but I think there's huge potential. And then lastly is citizenship, where AIs are helping people organize and reach consensus. There's a lot of uses within unions. There are a lot of uses among NGOs that are trying to organize movements. We're seeing, at least theoretically, Taiwan has a system where AI is helping citizens engage with democracy. Massachusetts, there's a program called MAPLE, which helps citizens write comments to legislators about legislation. Make.org is a European AI system. It's used in Germany. About 500,000 people got together and debated a political issue. So here again, we're seeing a lot of nascent systems. These are not generative, generally. Some of them are, but they're helping citizens be better citizens.
So they're sort of extended high-tech versions of citizen assemblies.
And and here in a lot of these instances, the AIs aren't doing anything humans can't do. But the problem is we don't have enough humans to do it. So they're increasing the scale of a citizen assembly by allowing for virtual convening of 500,000 people, which if we had the human moderators, we can do it, but we're just not going to.
Bruce, I wonder whether there's a contradiction. This is all very interesting when it comes to citizenship. On the one hand, this technology is universal. Anyone can have access to it. On the other hand, we live increasingly in an age of borders. We did a show a few days ago about borders, about how borders are back, for better or worse. How do we, and Trump, of course, and other authoritarian populists have benefited from this new fear of outsiders and immigration and all the rest of it. How do we use AI in a progressive way to underline the fact that, for better or worse, we live in an age of borders?
I think that comes back to trust, sort of where we started, and we see this with AI systems. So this with DeepSeek. Would you trust a Chinese AI? I mean, similarly, would China trust an American AI? Singapore has an AI sea lion, which is being deliberately trained on Southeast Asian languages because they want an AI that reflects their language and their culture. It's a measure of trust there. France is building a national AI. So we are seeing borders come back. I mean, yes, there are these giant US tech monopolies that are trying to push their system through the planet, but the cost of building these systems is going down. So we're seeing more nationalistic systems. I think that's for the good, because again, like we talked about in the beginning, there isn't going to be one ethic. There's going to be one set of morals that these AI is going to reflect. They're going to be local, human ethics. On the other hand, we want an AI to be broader in its value system. So there's going to be a place also for international AI systems, just like we have a place for international organizations right now. So this is very much in flux. I think you're hitting on a key problem, and it comes back to trust. But as the cost of building these goes down, you'll see more of them to choose from. And then it'll be easier to choose an AI that best reflects what it is you want out of it.
Last time you were on the show back in 2023, you talked about how the powerful bend society's rules, and you argued that we need to bend them back. This was part of your message in a hacker's mind. So your politics were clear. One of the problems, most people I think would agree, both on the right and the left, with contemporary politics is the increasing inequality between the wealthy and the poor, between the powerful and the powerless. Can AI help on that front? What would you like to see AI do in terms of bending society's rules back to the people?
The technology can help, but the technology alone won't help. Right? This is not a problem of technology. This is a problem of politics. It's a problem of economics. And the powerful getting more powerful. They're using tech, but they're using the social and political economic systems that we've built that allow them to use tech. So AI could make things more egalitarian and reduce power imbalances if we let it. But we have to build a political economic structure that rewards that. And right now, most of our systems have the powerful getting more powerful. That's why we're seeing so much wealth inequality in our society. And you fix that, and then the underlying tech can help. I think if you don't fix that, then the tech is just going to push towards more inequality. The difference could be is if this tech becomes much cheaper so that you don't have this inherent monopolization. Right now, it's just a few companies controlling this technology. What you want is there to be much broader. And if you have that, it's harder for the powerful to control it, and it's more likely to be egalitarian. But fundamentally, I think we blame the politics and not the tech.
Should we trust guys like, I mean, leave Musk out of it because most people don't trust him, but should we trust someone like Sam Altman, who's obviously given a great deal of thought to this? He's a complicated, perhaps slippery character, both inside and outside OpenAI. He's probably the singly most powerful figure now in the AI world as the CEO of OpenAI. When he talks about how AI can create these cornucopias, you get similar language from the guys at Anthropic and elsewhere. Should we be trusting these people?
I mean, don't think of it as should we trust the people, but just should we trust any human who has that kind of power in society? And the answer to that is no, because it's not the person, it's the system they're embedded in. Even if they are the people of the best intentions, the system is corrupting. You saw this with OpenAI. It started out being not for profit, but the system just didn't permit that. And whether they liked it or not, they had to change. So it's not a matter of the person or the personality. It's the office they hold. I don't want anyone to have that sort of power, no matter who they are, no matter how trustworthy they are, because it's not a system that allows for that trustworthiness to come forward.
Your book is optimistic, unusually optimistic. You cautious optimism, a very erudite, well thought out optimism. Ultimately, though, and this often happens with these kind of books, Bruce, is you suggest that the choice is up to us. It's our agency. It's in our hands. But we're back to the old chicken and egg problem. Your promise of rewiring democracy is to give us more agency. And you suggest that to do that, we need to manifest agency. Where do we begin?
So it's
where do we find this agency?
I think it's not a chicken and egg problem, because I think fundamentally it is a stack. And the most important parts are economics and politics. So it's not a matter of tech or politics. Definitely politics first. Those are where the issues lie. And technology lives on top of that. And technology magnifies what politics and economics gives you. If you don't have the agency politically, no amount of tech can change that. And if you do have the agency politically, then you can use tech in a way that's beneficial. So we see technology as being an arm of politics and economics. I mean, just the book really doesn't talk very much about how AI can be used to overthrow autocracy. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about how a functional democracy can use AI to be more democratic. So that's the stance we're taking. And I think technology definitely plays a role in all of these things, but it is not at its core that economics matters more, politics matters more.
How do you convince people, though, that this matters? Most people are really busy. Most people, I mean, an enormous number of people in America don't even vote. How are you going to get people to recognize that the choice is up to us? Some of these issues are quite abstract. They require some degree of technological understanding. Where is this will, so to speak, to power going to come from?
And this is hard. This is a bigger problem than me, right? Because in the terms of things to worry about, I think AI is almost in the noise. To worry about loss of democracy, to worry about income inequality, to worry about climate change. Right? These are actually really severe problems, much bigger than tech, although tech plays a role in all of them. And if we can't convince people that these are issues, I don't think we have any chance of convincing them that the smaller ones, that the harder to understand ones matter. I think we as society have a work cut out for us here. And you're right that so many people in the United States don't vote. You go to Australia and voting is mandatory. I mean, they have a law, you have to vote. We don't do that here. Should we? It's an interesting thing to think about. Or will that just make things worse? We are definitely in a world right now where we have, global problems that are immediate and need solutions. And our institutions are certainly not up for the task of solving them. This gets back to your question about, should we, go back and refigure what democracy should look like in the 21st century? We kind of really need to, yet we're not equipped to do that right now. I think you're asking important questions bigger than the scope of the book, things I think about, things that are worth talking about, things that a little bit I talk about in my previous book on hacking these systems. And it's, I think these are our challenges as democracies in the first half of the 21st century.
You mentioned Chinese model, which isn't a democratic system. We've done a lot of shows on the viability of a Chinese model, top-down system, addressing stuff like solar energy and reforming government and society, which America is struggling with. We've also done a number of shows on the decline of international organizations and why that's the case. What would happen if, is it conceivable, Bruce, that AI might be able to transform our politics, our government, and our citizenship? But it wouldn't be about rewiring democracy. It would be about replacing democracy with something else, maybe a kind of enlightened authoritarianism, the sort that exists in a sense in Singapore and certainly in China.
We could run that thought experiment. We talk about it in our book, and that wouldn't be democracy. And you can imagine saying to, whether it's a powerful person or a powerful AI, like, you figure it out. Monetary supply, climate policy, food safety, airplane maintenance. You just figure it out. Tell us what to do. Maybe, it would certainly our ability to decide and be a democracy would atrophy, because we would forget how to do those things. I think that it would fundamentally be a dystopia. And even if we can imagine this AI being capable of getting to the correct answer, whatever that is, that democracy is more than just deciding what the answer is. That democracy is the process of deciding. And that if we lose that process, we're no longer in a democracy. We're no longer in control of our future. So that even if we can imagine an AI or a brilliant human who can just give us the correct answer, that isn't better than the messy politics of figuring it out. As awful as that messy politics might be, I think it's essential.
Final question, Bruce. Everyone should, of course, read your book. It's going to be published. It's the book you authored with Nathan Sanders. Nathan, I think, is going to come on the show in October, and it's published in October. The book comes with a rather fuzzy image of a Roman or Greek statue, which implies that, I'm not sure it was your choice to put that image on the front, but it suggests that we might have something to learn from antiquity or history in general. AI is, of course, about the future. What can we learn from the past, not just from 1776, but perhaps from antiquity's experiment with democracy or other democratic experiments? In other words, in addition to rewiring democracy, what else should we reread or rethink in terms of making sense of what's happening in the 21st century?
So first off, that's a statue of Athena, the goddess of democracy, pixelated, of course, for the 21st century. And I think there's a
Why,
lot
of
of
course?
value.
Why,
Sorry?
of course? Why?
Yes. Well, I mean, Athena is the goddess of democracy. So it's the problem with
I take your point about Athena, but why would it be? Why is it, of course, pixelated? Why should we be pixelating?
Because it has to look modern. I mean, so choosing a book cover is its own thing. Democracy is actually a hard topic to write a cover about because it's such an overloaded word. And I assure you, all the covers were weird, and we went with the best one we could think of. So that's kind of mixing old and new. That was the idea there. And I think there is value in thinking about mixing old and new, and not just Athens. There's a lot of democratic history throughout human society. Medieval towns were all about democracy. They voted constantly about things. Native Americans had their own form of democracy. You have democracy traditions coming out of Africa that are very different. And the thing to learn from that is that there are many different ways to do democracy. We tend to think that the United States model, or the United States model and the European model, are the only ways to run a democracy. There are many, many more ways. And the more things we can imagine, the more possibilities we can think of, the more options we realize that we have. Technology plays a part in that, because technology gives us capabilities we didn't have before. We talk about speed of things, the scale of things, the scope, the sophistication. AIs can replace humans in certain ways, can augment humans in other ways. But knowing about the past, the present, and ideas about the future, I think there's a lot to be said for reading science fiction stories that talk about hypothetical democracies. Just give us the ability to imagine more possibilities. I think we're going to need that in these years as we think about all of these stressors on democracy and how to resolve them.
I always like to end AI conversations, Bruce, by asking my guest how they would prove to our viewers and listeners that you're not a bot. How can we be sure that this Bruce Schneier is actually Bruce Schneier and not some AI version of Bruce Schneier?
Well, so right now, AIs are still pretty bad at fingers, so I can move my hands around, and the fact that it works is good evidence that it's not an AI image generation. The text, I don't know. I mean, I tried to create last year a Bruce bot where I fed it all my writings and tried to get it to talk like me. Didn't do a very good job. So I guess, checking me with other of my writings and speakings would help provide evidence. But other than that, it's getting really hard.
It's getting hard, but this is the real Bruce Schneier. You've convinced me, Bruce. Certainly people listening won't see the fingers, but the voice is hard to replicate. Certainly the mind is hard to replicate. Your new co-authored books are fascinating. Optimistic take on the potential for AI to rewire democracy. As always, Bruce, real honor to have you on the show, and we'll get you back because there's so much more to talk about. Thank you so much.
Either I'll come back or my AI avatar will come back, and you'll have to guess.